I lost everything on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that started with burnt coffee and ended with my entire career in ashes. Vincent Shaw called me into his office at 3 p.m., all polished mahogany desk and practiced concern. He looked like every senior partner at Morrison & Shaw Financial Services. Expensive tie, graying temples, the kind of authority that came from decades of manipulating numbers and people with equal ease. "Ava, we've discovered irregularities in the Castellano account," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. $800,000 transferred to an offshore account. Your access codes were used. My stomach dropped. I'd worked on that account for 6 months, meticulously documenting every transaction for the forensic audit. That's impossible. I never authorized any transfers. Let me see the records. The evidence is conclusive. Vincent's tone carried finality. We're terminating your employment effective immediately. Security will escort you out. If you cooperate, we won't press criminal charges. I wanted to argue, to demand a proper investigation, but the 2 security guards already standing by the door told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about truth. This was about covering someone's tracks, and I'd been chosen as the scapegoat. They gave me 10 minutes to clear my desk while colleagues I'd worked with for 3 years avoided eye contact. Sarah from compliance actually turned away when I passed her cubicle. Nobody wanted to be associated with the disgraced forensic accountant who supposedly embezzled $800,000 from a client dangerous enough that Morrison & Shaw handled his finances with surgical precision. I drove home to my cramped Queens apartment in a daze. 24 years old, 3 years into building a career I'd fought tooth and nail to achieve, and it was gone. Worse, my reputation was destroyed. No firm would touch me after this. Vincent had made certain of that. The answering machine blinked red when I walked in. 4 messages from Grandma Rose's care facility. I pressed play with shaking hands. "Miss Sullivan, this is Brookside Senior Living. Your grandmother's medication costs for this month are overdue. The total is $3,500. Please call us back to arrange payment." I sank onto the couch, head in my hands. Grandma Rose had raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. Now she was 76, with congestive heart failure that required expensive medications and constant monitoring. The care facility was the only place that could provide what she needed, and I'd been covering costs on my forensic accountant's salary. Barely, but I'd managed. Now I had nothing. 2 weeks of severance pay, $1,200 in savings, and rent due in 5 days. The math was brutal and unforgiving. I could pay rent or Grandma Rose's medication, but not both. 3 days later, desperation drove me to a job posting I'd normally ignore. Cocktail server at Onyx, an upscale club in downtown Boston that catered to the kind of clientele who thought nothing of spending $500 on a bottle of vodka. The pay was decent, tips were supposedly excellent, and they hired me on the spot, probably because I looked presentable and desperate, in that order. The manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Teresa, showed me the ropes during my first shift. Keep the drinks flowing. Don't ask questions about who anyone is or what they're discussing, and you'll do fine here. The clientele values discretion above everything else. I nodded, already calculating tips in my head. If I could pull in $300 a night, I might stay afloat long enough to find a way to clear my name. The club was sleek and expensive, all black leather and dim lighting designed to provide privacy for conversations that probably shouldn't happen in public. I served drinks with practiced efficiency, keeping my head down and my ears open out of habit. Forensic accounting had trained me to notice patterns, inconsistencies, the small details that revealed larger truths. It was my 4th night when I noticed them. 3 men in a private booth near the back, speaking in low tones that barely carried over the ambient music. I was delivering their 3rd round of drinks when I caught fragments of their conversation, transferred through the shell company. 2.3 million total, but we can only track 1.5 of it, one of them said, dark-haired with a scar across his knuckles. The other 800,000 went somewhere else. Boss wants answers by Friday, another replied, older, with silver threading his temples. I set down their drinks carefully, professional neutrality fixed on my face, but my mind was racing. 2.3 million, 800,000 missing. The same amount Vincent had accused me of stealing. It couldn't be coincidence. The third man glanced up as I turned to leave. He was younger than the others, maybe mid-30s, with light brown hair and a scar cutting through his right eyebrow. His gaze was assessing, clinical, the look of someone who noticed everything and forgot nothing. "Thank you," he said. His tone was polite but carried weight. This was someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. I nodded and retreated, pulse hammering. I'd stumbled onto something connected to my situation. I was certain of it. The numbers were too specific, too aligned with my own disaster. For the next 2 hours, I paid close attention to that booth. They were joined by another man around midnight, and the energy in the space shifted immediately. Everyone in the club seemed to become aware of his presence without looking directly at him. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with black hair styled back from a face that could have been carved from granite. Dark eyes, defined jaw, presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He wore a black suit with the shirt open at the collar, revealing a thick gold chain. A thin scar marked his chin on the right side. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who owned everything he touched. The 3 men stood when he arrived, deference clear in their body language. He said something too quiet for me to hear, and they sat back down, tension radiating from the booth. I delivered their next round personally, hoping to catch more of their conversation. As I set down the drinks, the newcomer's gaze found mine. His eyes were dark brown, almost black in the dim lighting, and intensely focused. For 3 seconds, we maintained eye contact, and I felt the air compress in my lungs. He looked away first, attention returning to his companions. I retreated, but I could feel his gaze following me across the club floor. Teresa found me in the stockroom 20 minutes later. "The gentleman in booth 7 wants you to serve his table exclusively for the rest of the night. Consider it a compliment. He tips well." My instincts screamed warnings, but I needed this job. I needed every dollar I could earn. So I spent the next 2 hours serving drinks to 4 men who discussed business in careful code, never saying anything explicit but revealing patterns to someone trained to see them. Shell companies, offshore accounts, asset transfers that happened in increments designed to avoid detection. I'd built a career tracking exactly this kind of financial structure. And even through their careful language, I could piece together the shape of what they were discussing. Someone had stolen money from them. Someone had used sophisticated methods to hide the theft. And they were systematically tracking down every lead. When the club closed at 2 a.m., I'd earned $420 in tips, most of it from booth 7. I should have been grateful. Instead, I was terrified, because I'd made a critical mistake. During their conversation, they'd mentioned account numbers, complex strings that I'd recognized as offshore holdings. And I'd done what I'd been trained to do for 3 years. I'd memorized them, written them down on my order pad between drink requests, documented evidence out of pure professional instinct. I was halfway to my car when I realized I'd left my jacket inside. I ran back, slipped through the employee entrance, and headed toward the locker room. Voices stopped me in the hallway. The same 4 men from booth 7, standing near the back office. The man with the gold chain was speaking. "Run full audit on every account that touched the Castellano transfer. Someone inside had access, and I want them found by Monday." Castellano. The same client account Vincent had accused me of stealing from. This wasn't coincidence. This was confirmation. I stepped backward carefully, but my shoe scraped against the floor. The sound echoed in the quiet hallway. 4 heads turned toward me simultaneously. The man with the scar through his eyebrow moved first, crossing the distance between us in 3 strides. His hand clamped around my wrist before I could run. "What are you doing back here?" he asked quietly. "I forgot my jacket. I was just leaving." My voice came out steadier than I felt. The man with the gold chain approached slowly. Up close, he was even more imposing. Taller, broader, radiating danger like heat from asphalt in summer. He studied my face with unnerving intensity. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ava. Ava Sullivan. I just started working here. I'm sorry. I didn't hear anything. I was just getting my jacket." His gaze dropped to the order pad, still clutched in my other hand. The one with account numbers scribbled between drink orders. Everything stopped. The air, my heart, Time itself seemed to pause while he reached out and took the pad from my trembling fingers. He read the page slowly. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Calculation mixed with something darker. "Luca," he said quietly. The man holding my wrist tightened his grip fractionally. "Secure her. Bring her to the warehouse. Nobody sees. Nobody knows." "Wait." I tried to pull away. "I don't know anything. I was just writing down drink orders." The man with the gold chain leaned close, voice dropping to lethal quiet. "You wrote down offshore account numbers that nobody outside my organization should know exist. So either you're the thief we've been hunting, or you're about to become a very serious problem. Either way, we're going to have a long conversation about exactly what you thought you were doing." They moved fast after that, a hand over my mouth, strong arms lifting me. The world tilted and darkened as they carried me through the back exit toward a vehicle I couldn't see. I'd come to Onyx desperate to survive. Instead, I'd walk directly into something far more dangerous than unemployment, and whatever was coming next would make losing my career look like the least of my problems. The warehouse smelled of oil and rust and fear. My fear, specifically, sharp and metallic in the back of my throat as they hauled me out of the SUV and through a side entrance. Rain pounded the metal roof, thunder rolling across the Boston harbor like artillery fire. They shoved me into a metal chair in the center of an empty space. A single overhead bulb swung lazily, casting shadows that moved like living things across concrete floors. The man with the gold chain stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, watching me with the patience of a predator that had already caught its prey. Luca, the one with the scarred eyebrow, positioned himself near the door. 2 other men flanked the exits. I was surrounded, trapped, and completely at their mercy. "I'm going to ask you questions," the man with the gold chain said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. Somehow that made it worse. "How you answer determines what happens next. Lie to me, and this becomes unpleasant for both of us. Tell me the truth, and we might find a solution that doesn't end with your body in the harbor." My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them together. "I don't know what you think I did, but I'm just a waitress. I needed a job. That's all. You're not just a waitress." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then turned it toward me. My LinkedIn profile filled the display. Ava Sullivan, 24 years old. Graduated summa cum laude from Boston University with degrees in accounting and finance. Worked as a forensic accountant for Morrison and Shaw Financial Services until you were fired 3 weeks ago for allegedly embezzling $800,000 from a client account. That client was Antonio Castellano, my associate. The room tilted. They knew everything. I didn't steal anything. Vincent Shaw, my boss, he framed me. He took that money and made it look like I did it. Vincent Shaw. The man exchanged a glance with Luca. "Interesting. We've been tracking unusual activity through shell companies connected to Castellano's accounts. Someone with inside access has been systematically stealing from us. First 800,000, then another 1.5 million through a series of transfers designed to avoid detection. 2.3 million total. I didn't touch any of it," I said desperately. "I was doing a forensic audit on the Castellano account when Vincent accused me of theft. He fired me before I could finish the analysis. If he framed me, it's because I was getting too close to discovering what he was really doing." The man studied me for a long moment. "You wrote down account numbers tonight. Offshore holdings that nobody outside my organization should recognize. Why?" "Habit," I said, and it sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "I spent 3 years as a forensic accountant. I hear numbers, I document them. It's automatic. I wasn't planning to do anything with them. I just wrote them down. Automatic," he repeated. "You documented evidence of financial crimes automatically, because you're trained to track exactly this kind of activity. I couldn't tell if that made my situation better or worse. Yes." He walked closer, each step deliberate, until he stood directly in front of my chair. This close, I could see the details the dim lighting had hidden. The scar on his chin was old, faded white against tanned skin. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and completely unreadable. "My name is Adrian Kane," he said quietly. "Though that's not the name I was born with. The organization I run handles financial operations for people who prefer to keep their business private. When someone steals $2.3 million from us, it's not just about money. It's about reputation, trust, the understanding that crossing us has consequences. I didn't cross you, I whispered. I didn't even know you existed until tonight. But you have skills I need. Adrian crouched down, bringing himself to eye level. You're trained to track financial crimes. You understand shell companies, offshore accounts, the methods someone would use to hide stolen funds. You were auditing the Castellano account when you were fired, which means you saw the original $800,000 theft. Some of it, I admitted. I documented irregularities in the transfer patterns, but Vincent shut down my investigation before I could trace the complete chain. And if I gave you access to our financial records, could you find who stole from us? The question hung in the air like smoke. I understood what he was offering. Not freedom, but purpose. A way to use my skills to save myself. Maybe, I said carefully. If the thief used standard methods to hide the transfers, I could track the pattern. But I'd need complete access to your accounts, transaction histories, everything. Adrian stood, stepping back. Luca, opinions? The man by the door shifted his weight. She's either the thief playing innocent, or she's a resource we can exploit. Either way, keeping her controlled gives us options. Controlled, I repeated. You mean kidnapped? I mean protected, Adrian said. If you're telling the truth and Vincent Shaw framed you, then he knows you're capable of exposing what he's really doing. That makes you a liability to him. And if he's working with whoever stole our money, you're a target for more than just my organization. The logic was brutal but sound. I'd been so focused on surviving day to day that I hadn't considered the larger implications. Vincent had framed me to cover his own theft. If I started asking questions or digging into what really happened, he'd have every reason to ensure I stayed silent permanently. So, what are you proposing? I asked. You work for me. Find the thief, track the money, and prove whether Vincent Shaw is involved. In exchange, I don't kill you for documenting classified financial information. Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. Oh, and there's one more thing. Your grandmother, Rose Sullivan, currently residing at Brookside Senior Living. Congestive heart failure requires $3,500 monthly in medication and care. You've been paying for that on your accountant's salary, but now you're unemployed and desperate. Ice flooded my veins. Don't you dare threaten her. I'm not threatening. I'm establishing the terms. He moved closer again, and this time there was something dangerous in his eyes. You work for me, find my money, and I'll cover your grandmother's medical expenses for as long as it takes. Refuse, and you're on your own trying to pay for her care while unemployed and under investigation for embezzlement. How long do you think you'll last? I wanted to tell him to go to hell, wanted to refuse on principle, maintain some shred of dignity in this nightmare. But Grandma Rose was 76 years old with a failing heart. Without her medication, she'd be dead in weeks. Adrian watched my internal struggle with detached interest. Clock's ticking, Ava. Your grandmother's facility called you 4 times this week about overdue payments. In another week, they'll discharge her. Where will she go? Back to your apartment that you can't afford? A county hospital that won't provide the level of care she needs? You bastard, I whispered. Pragmatist. He corrected. I need someone with your skills, and you need resources you can't access any other way. This is business, not personal. Luca spoke from his position by the door. Boss, we should move her soon. Longer we stay here, higher the risk. Adrian nodded but kept his gaze locked on mine. Decision time. Work for me and keep your grandmother alive, or refuse and take your chances with unemployment, criminal investigation, and whatever Vincent Shaw has planned for loose ends. What's it going to be? I thought about Grandma Rose. The way she'd raised me after my parents died, working double shifts at the diner to keep food on the table. The way she'd helped me with homework, celebrated every achievement, told me I could be anything I wanted if I worked hard enough. She'd given me everything. And now I was being forced to work for a criminal organization to keep her alive. I'll do it, I said. The words tasted like ash. I'll find your thief. but I want your word that my grandmother gets her medication and care no matter what. You have it. Adrian extended his hand. Welcome to the organization, Miss Sullivan. I didn't take his hand. Couldn't bring myself to make it feel like an agreement, rather than coercion. After a moment, he lowered his arm, expression unreadable. Luca, take her to the house. Get her set up in the East Wing, full access to the financial database, whatever equipment she needs. Adrian checked his watch. We'll start in the morning. I want preliminary analysis by end of business tomorrow. They moved me again, this time into a different SUV. The drive took 40 minutes through darkness and rain, winding roads that led away from the city into forested hills. When we finally stopped, I saw a massive house silhouetted against storm clouds. Mansion, really. 3 stories of stone and glass that screamed money and power. Luca walked me inside, through rooms decorated with expensive furniture and art that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. He stopped outside a bedroom on the 2nd floor. This is yours. Bathroom through there. Closets stocked with clothes that should fit. Someone will bring you dinner. He paused. Don't try to leave. There are guards on every exit. Cameras everywhere. You're here until the job's done. Prison with nicer decor, I said bitterly. Protection with expectations, he corrected. Adrian doesn't make empty threats, but he also keeps his word. Your grandmother will get her care. You do the work, everyone benefits. Simple. He left me alone in a room that was bigger than my entire apartment. King bed, expensive linens, windows overlooking dark forest. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking with delayed shock. 24 hours ago, I'd been a desperate waitress trying to survive. Now I was trapped in a mansion, forced to work for people who discussed murder like business strategy, all to keep my grandmother alive. I'd wanted to clear my name, find out who really stole from Castellano. Now I'd get that chance. But the price was my freedom, and any illusion that I controlled my own life. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. Inside, I sat in gilded captivity and wondered how Vincent Shaw's betrayal had led me here, into the hands of someone far more dangerous than any senior partner at a financial services firm. Adrian Kane had bought my skills with threats and necessity, and somehow, I'd have to find a way to survive working for him long before I figured out how to escape. Morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through unfamiliar windows. I'd barely slept, kept awake by the surreal reality of my situation. Prisoner in a mansion, forced to track stolen millions for a criminal organization, all to keep my grandmother alive. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, I found clothes laid out on the dresser. Dark jeans, burgundy sweater, everything in exactly my size. The precision was unsettling. Someone knocked at 7 a.m. sharp. A woman in her 40s with severe features and efficient movements entered carrying a breakfast tray. Mr. Kane expects you in his office at 8. First door on the left downstairs. She left before I could ask questions. I ate mechanically, showered in the marble bathroom that was larger than my old bedroom, and dressed in the clothes provided. Every action felt like surrendering another piece of myself. Adrian's office was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, windows overlooking mountains that stretched into the distance. He sat behind a massive desk, typing on a laptop, still wearing black, but the gold chain was visible at his collar. Luca stood near the window, arms crossed, watching me enter with that assessing gaze I was learning to recognize. Sit, Adrian said without looking up. I took the chair across from him, spine straight, refusing to appear as terrified as I felt. He finished whatever he was typing, then turned the laptop toward me. Complete access to our financial database. Every account, every transaction, every shell company we operate. Find the pattern. Find the thief. I pulled the laptop closer, fingers already moving across the keys. The system was sophisticated, encrypted, organized with military precision. Dozens of accounts, hundreds of transactions, a web of financial activity that would take days to fully map. The original theft was $800,000 from the Castellano account, I said, falling into the analytical mindset that had always felt safer than emotions. That happened 3 months ago. You said there was another 1.5 million stolen. Over the past 6 weeks, Luca answered. Smaller amounts, different accounts, designed to avoid triggering our internal alerts. We only noticed when we ran quarterly reconciliation. I started building a spreadsheet, documenting every suspicious transaction. Patterns emerged quickly. Shell companies that existed only on paper. Transfers that moved through multiple accounts before disappearing offshore. Whoever was doing this understood forensic accounting well enough to hide their tracks from casual observation. But I wasn't casual observation. I'd spent 3 years learning to see exactly what people tried to hide. Here, I said after an hour, pointing to the screen. These 5 transactions all route through the same shell company. Meridian Holdings LLC, registered 3 months ago in Delaware, same week as the Castellano theft. That's not coincidence. Adrian moved around the desk to stand behind my chair, studying the screen. He was close enough that I could smell expensive cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. My pulse kicked up for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Who registered Meridian Holdings? He asked. I dug deeper into the corporate records, tracing registration documents. The name that appeared made my breath catch. Vincent Shaw, my former boss. He used a law firm in Delaware to file the paperwork, but his name is on the incorporation documents as managing partner. Silence filled the office. Adrian's hand came down on the desk beside me, knuckles white with controlled tension. Vincent Shaw stole from us. Then he framed you to cover his tracks. And he's still at Morrison and Shaw Financial, I said. Still handling accounts, still positioned to steal more if he wants. He knows I was getting close to exposing the Castellano theft. Firing me eliminated that threat. Luca spoke from the window. How confident are you about this? I pulled up more records, showing the money trail. 90%. The pattern is clear. Vincent used his access at Morrison and Shaw to initiate the transfers, route them through Meridian Holdings, then move them offshore. I'd need to access Morrison and Shaw's internal system to confirm the final 10%, but based on what I see here, Vincent is your thief. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. Vincent Shaw stole $2.3 million from my organization. That's a death sentence. But if we move against him directly, it exposes how we discovered the theft. That creates complications. There's more, I said, pulling up another set of transactions. These transfers show money moving from Meridian Holdings to accounts connected to the Greco family. I recognize the routing numbers from articles I read about organized crime financial structures. Vincent isn't just stealing from you. He's selling information to your rivals. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Luca's hand moved to his waistband, resting on what I assumed was a weapon. Adrian's expression went completely neutral, which somehow was more terrifying than anger. The Grecos, he said softly. That makes this personal. They've been trying to undermine our operations for 2 years. If Vincent is feeding them intelligence about our accounts, our clients, our financial structures, that's an act of war. He pulled out his phone, sent a rapid text. 30 seconds later, 2 men entered the office. Both wore dark suits, both moved with military precision. I need surveillance on Vincent Shaw, Adrian told them. Full coverage. Home, office, phone records, everything. I want to know everyone he talks to, everywhere he goes, every transaction he makes. Report directly to me. The men nodded and left without a word. Adrian turned back to me. You just proved your value. Good work. The praise felt wrong coming from someone who'd threatened my grandmother to force my cooperation, but part of me responded to it anyway. I'd spent 3 years building expertise in forensic accounting, had it all stripped away by false accusations. Having someone recognize my skills, even someone like Adrian, scratched an itch I hadn't realized was bothering me. What happens now? I asked. We confirm your findings, build a complete picture of Vincent's operation, then we deal with him. Adrian sat on the edge of his desk, studying me. You'll keep working the financial analysis. The more we know about how he's moving money, the better we can cut off his resources and leverage. And then we make him pay for stealing from us and framing you. He tilted his head slightly. You want revenge, don't you? For what he did to your career, your reputation. I can see it in the way you talked about him. That anger is useful. Channel it into the work. He wasn't wrong. I did want revenge. Wanted Vincent Shaw to face consequences for destroying my life to cover his own crimes. But working with Adrian to get that revenge meant sinking deeper into this world, becoming complicit in whatever they plan to do. I just want my name cleared, I said. I want proof that I didn't steal that money. You'll get it. But first, we need Vincent to make a mistake. And I have an idea about how to make that happen. Adrian's expression shifted into calculation. He thinks you're neutralized, fired, discredited, no threat to him. What if we change that calculation? What if you reach out, pretend you have evidence against him, and see how he reacts? You want me to be bait, I said flatly. I want you to be the catalyst that forces him into the open. Adrian crossed his arms. We'll control the situation. Surveillance, backup, complete coverage. You'll never be in real danger. But if Vincent thinks you're about to expose him, he'll either try to buy your silence or eliminate you as a threat. Either way, he reveals his hand. Luca moved closer. It's solid strategy. We get confirmation of his guilt, probably catch him admitting to the theft on recording, and we see who else is involved in his operation. I thought about Vincent's practiced concern when he'd fired me, the way he destroyed my career without hesitation. Thought about working as a waitress while my grandmother's medication went unpaid, sleeping in fear that I'd lose everything because of his lies. When? I asked. We need a few days to position surveillance and build leverage, Adrian said. Use the time to map the rest of his financial structure. The more we know, the more control we have when we move. Over the next 3 days, I lived in that office, tracking money through digital mazes that Vincent had built to hide his crimes. Adrian was there constantly, reviewing my work, asking sharp questions that revealed his understanding of financial operations went far deeper than I'd expected. Luca came and went, updating us on surveillance findings. Vincent met regularly with someone from the Greco organization, passed documents in parking lots, had dinner at restaurants where conversations were carefully private. He was building a comprehensive betrayal, selling out every client he handled at Morrison and Shaw. I documented all of it, building a case that would destroy him as thoroughly as he'd destroyed me. Late the third night, I found Adrian alone in the office, staring at financial reports. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. Human. For the first time since I'd met him. Why do you do this? I asked from the doorway. He glanced up, surprised. Do what? Run a criminal organization. You're clearly intelligent, educated. You could do anything. Why this? For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down the reports. My father built this empire over 30 years. When I was 22, he was assassinated in a restaurant parking lot by the Lombardis, a rival family. They thought killing him would collapse our organization, make us easy targets. I inherited leadership 3 days after burying him. The choice was, take control or watch everything he built get destroyed by people who saw us as weak. So you took control, I said quietly. I learned fast, made hard decisions, survived long through being smarter and more ruthless than anyone expected from a 22-year-old kid. He met my eyes. This life chose me, Miss Sullivan. I just decided how I'd live it. There was pain there, buried under layers of control and strategy. I recognized it because I carried my own. My parents died when I was 8. Car accident. Grandma Rose raised me alone, worked herself nearly to death to give me opportunities. I became an accountant because I wanted security, stability, a life she'd be proud of. And then Vincent took it all away. So we're both here because other people's choices shaped our paths, Adrian said. The difference is I embrace this world. You're still fighting it, because I don't belong here. Maybe not, but you're good at what you do, and right now that makes you valuable. Embrace that instead of fighting your situation. He stood, moved closer. We're going after Vincent in 2 days. Restaurant meeting, public location. You'll confront him with evidence. Make him react. Are you ready? I thought about everything Vincent had stolen from me. Not just my job, but my identity, my future, my sense of control. He'd made me into a victim. Working with Adrian was morally complicated and probably dangerous, but it was also the only path I had toward getting my life back. I'm ready, I said. Adrian's hand came up, cupped my jaw gently. The touch sent electricity down my spine. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and for one breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me. Then he stepped back, walls slamming into place. Get some rest. Thursday's going to be a long day. He left me standing alone in his office, heart racing, skin burning where he'd touched me. I was trapped in this house, forced to work for someone dangerous and morally compromised. But somewhere in the past 3 days, the dynamic had shifted. Adrian wasn't just my captor anymore, and that realization was more dangerous than anything else I'd encountered here. Thursday arrived with clear skies and cold air that bit through my coat as I walked into Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Boston. Vincent was already there, seated at a corner table, looking exactly like the successful senior partner he pretended to be. Graying temples, confident posture, practiced charm that had fooled me for 3 years. The recording device felt heavy against my ribs, hidden beneath my olive green blouse. Luca had attached it that morning with clinical efficiency, showing me the tiny microphone clipped to my bra strap. Adrian's people were positioned throughout the restaurant, surveillance covering every angle. I wasn't alone, but I felt isolated walking toward the man who destroyed my life. Vincent stood when I approached, expression carefully neutral. Ava, your message said this was urgent. I have to admit, I was surprised to hear from you. I'm sure you were. I sat without waiting for invitation. Considering you thought framing me for embezzlement would keep me silent permanently. His face remained pleasant, but something shifted in his eyes. Calculation. I don't know what you're talking about. The evidence clearly showed you'd stolen from the Castellano account. Evidence you fabricated. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder containing financial records I'd compiled over the past week. Meridian Holdings, LLC. Registered in Delaware 3 months ago with you as managing partner. $800,000 moved through that shell company from Castellano's account. Then another $1.5 million in smaller increments over 6 weeks. All of it routing to offshore accounts you control. Vincent's composure cracked fractionally. He glanced around the restaurant, assessing who might overhear. You can't prove any of that. I can prove all of it. Bank records, corporate filings, transaction histories. I spent 3 years as a forensic accountant, Vincent. Did you really think I wouldn't be able to trace what you did? He leaned forward, voice dropping to barely above whisper. You're unemployed and under investigation. Nobody will believe you. I made sure of that. Maybe not yet, but I have copies of everything. Documents that show exactly how you stole $2.3 million and framed me to cover your tracks. And I know you've been selling information to the Greco family. Client lists, account structures, operational details. That's not just theft, Vincent. That's corporate espionage. For the first time, real fear flickered across his features. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? The point is, I know everything. And I'm giving you one chance to make this right. I kept my voice steady, delivering lines Adrian had coached me through. Confess to Morrison and Shaw about the theft. Clear my name publicly. Return the money you stole. Do that, and I won't take what I know to the authorities. Vincent sat back, studying me with new intensity. You're bluffing. If you had real evidence, you'd have gone to the police already. I'm giving you the option to fix this quietly, but if you refuse, I will burn you down publicly. Every client you've stolen from, every detail of your arrangement with the Grecos, all of it becomes public record. Your career, your reputation, your freedom, all gone. He was quiet for a long moment, hands clasped on the table. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted completely. Gone was the professional courtesy. What replaced it was cold and dangerous. You have no idea what you're interfering with. The Grecos aren't just business partners. They're insurance. Protection against people like Antonio Castellano, who think they can operate without consequences. You're working with them to destroy Castellano's organization, I said, understanding clicking into place. Using Morrison and Shaw's access to sabotage his financial operations from the inside. Castellano and his people are animals. They threaten anyone who doesn't comply with their demands. The Grecos offered me a way out, protection, and enough money to disappear when this is over. Vincent's expression hardened. I'm not the villain here, Ava. I'm surviving. Something you should understand, given your current circumstances. Who's paying for your grandmother's medication now that you're unemployed? How are you affording to eat, to keep a roof over your head? The question hit too close. I forced my expression to remain neutral. That's none of your concern. It is if you think you can threaten me. You're desperate, alone, and out of options. Which means someone put you up to this. Someone with resources and motivation to come after me. His eyes narrowed. Who are you really working for, Ava? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw made him stand abruptly. This conversation is over, but understand something. If you pursue this, if you take what you think you know to anyone, you won't just ruin me. You'll paint a target on yourself that will get you killed. The Grecos don't leave loose ends. He dropped cash on the table and walked out, moving fast enough that I knew something had spooked him badly. I sat frozen, pulse hammering, until Luca appeared at my elbow. He's gone. We have people following him. He gestured toward the exit. Come on. Adrian wants to debrief. We drove to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, industrial area that looked abandoned in the afternoon light. Inside, Adrian was waiting with 3 other men, all of them armed. Vincent was there too, zip-tied to a chair, blood already streaming from his nose where someone had hit him. I stopped in the doorway, stomach lurching. What is this? Insurance, Adrian said calmly. Vincent left the restaurant and immediately called the Grecos, warned them that someone was investigating the theft. We intercepted him 2 blocks away. Vincent glared at me with pure hatred. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've done. The Grecos will come for both of you now. They'll burn Castellano's entire organization to ash, and you'll die choking on the smoke. Adrian moved closer to Vincent's chair, expression utterly cold. You stole $2.3 million from us. You sold intelligence to our rivals, and you framed an innocent woman to cover your crimes. Now you're going to tell me everything. Where the money is, what information you gave the Grecos, what their plans are. All of it. Go to hell, Vincent spat. What happened next was brutal and efficient. I won't describe the details, but Adrian extracted information with methodical precision. No rage, no emotion, just cold calculation about what would make Vincent talk fastest. I watched from the corner, forcing myself not to look away. This was the world I'd stumbled into. These were the consequences of theft and betrayal in Adrian's universe. Vincent broke after 20 minutes. Gave up the location of the stolen money, 2 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Admitted he'd been passing client information to the Grecos for 8 months, long before the actual theft. Revealed their plan to assassinate Adrian during a scheduled meeting Friday night, eliminate his leadership and seize control of his financial operations. When Vincent finally stopped talking, slumped in the chair, broken and bleeding, Adrian turned to Luca. Get him cleaned up. I want him transferred to federal custody by tonight. Anonymous tip to the FBI about financial fraud and money laundering. Let them handle prosecution. You're not going to kill him? I asked, surprised. Death would be quick. Prison is worse. Federal charges for financial crimes, no bail, no protection from the Grecos or anyone else. He'll spend the rest of his life in a cell, watching everything he built collapse around him. Adrian's gaze was ice. That's better punishment than a bullet. He gestured for me to follow him outside. I walked on shaking legs, breath crystallizing in cold air. Behind us, Vincent was screaming about lawyers and rights, but nobody was listening. Are you all right? Adrian asked once we were alone. I watched you torture someone, I said, voice hollow. That's not something you're all right about. He destroyed your life to cover his crimes, stole from us, betrayed his clients, endangered dozens of people with his arrangements with the Grecos. This is justice in the world we operate in. Quick, certain, and permanent. I leaned against the warehouse wall, trying to process. You promised to clear my name. How does sending Vincent to federal prison do that? The FBI will find evidence in his records showing he fabricated the embezzlement charges against you. Morrison and Shaw will be forced to issue a retraction, clear your name officially. It's already in motion. By next week, you'll be able to work as a forensic accountant again if you want. That should have made me happy. My name cleared, my career restored. But standing in a warehouse where I'd just witnessed organized violence, I realized my old life felt distant and irrelevant. What about the Grecos? I asked. Vincent said they're planning to kill you Friday. Let me worry about that. Adrian moved closer, studying my face. Your part in this is done. Vincent's in custody. Your grandmother's medical expenses are covered for the next 6 months, like I promised. You're free to leave. Free. The word felt strange. I'd been trapped here for 2 weeks, forced to work under threat, living in fear and moral compromise. Now he was just letting me go, releasing me back to a life that no longer fit. Just like that? I said. I walk away and pretend none of this happened. You have a choice. Walk away, rebuild your life, forget about me and this organization, or stay. Keep working financial analysis, help us stay ahead of threats like Vincent. I'll pay well, protect you, give you purpose beyond documenting crimes for prosecutors who don't care. His dark eyes held mine. But staying means accepting what we do here. The violence, the moral compromise, the constant danger. You saw what happened to Vincent. That's the price of betrayal in this world. I thought about my grandmother, safe in her facility with medication paid for. Thought about my apartment I hadn't seen in 2 weeks, my old colleagues who'd abandoned me the moment Vincent made accusations. Thought about the past few days working alongside Adrian, using my skills for something that felt immediate and consequential instead of theoretical. And I thought about the way my pulse jumped when Adrian stood close, the electricity that hummed between us when our eyes met. Attraction to someone dangerous and morally complicated, but also intelligent and surprisingly principled within his own framework. I need time to think, I said finally. Adrian nodded. Take it, but decide soon. Friday's coming, and after we deal with the Grecos, things are going to change. I need to know if you're part of that future, or returning to your past. He walked back inside, leaving me alone in the cold with decisions that would define everything coming next. Behind me, Vincent's screams had stopped. Ahead, my old life waited. Familiar and safe, but safety suddenly felt like a cage I'd outgrown without realizing it. And despite everything I'd witnessed, part of me already knew which path I'd choose. I stayed. The decision crystallized over the 3 weeks following Vincent's arrest, each day pulling me deeper into Adrian's world until the line between choice and inevitability blurred completely. Morrison and Shaw issued a public retraction, clearing my name with corporate efficiency that felt hollow after everything I'd been through. My old boss called twice, offering reinstatement. I ignored both messages. The work Adrian gave me was challenging, using every skill I'd developed over 3 years in forensic accounting. I tracked financial patterns, identified potential threats, helped restructure their operations to avoid the vulnerabilities Vincent had exploited. And somewhere in those weeks, I stopped thinking about leaving. Adrian and I developed a rhythm. He'd find me in his office late at night, both of us working when everyone else had gone to sleep. We'd discuss financial strategies, debate risk assessment, occasionally drift into conversations about everything except what was building between us. The tension that had sparked during that first interrogation in the warehouse never disappeared. It just evolved, deepened, became something neither of us would acknowledge out loud, until everything changed on a Wednesday afternoon in late April. I'd been granted permission to visit Grandma Rose at Brookside twice a week, always with security Adrian insisted was necessary. She was doing better, the consistent medication and quality care working miracles. Her color had improved, her breathing easier, her spirits lifted by knowing I was safe and employed, even if I couldn't explain the details. I was leaving her room, smiling at something she'd said about a handsome doctor, when hands grabbed me from behind. A cloth pressed over my mouth and nose. Chemical smell burning my sinuses. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but the world tilted sideways and darkness swallowed everything. I woke in a van, hands zip-tied, head pounding. 2 men sat across from me, both wearing dark clothing, both armed. One spoke into a phone in Italian. Words I couldn't understand, but tone I recognized. This was about Adrian. The van stopped after what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. They hauled me out into an abandoned building, all broken windows and graffiti. Inside, a man in his 50s waited. Silver hair, expensive suit, presence that radiated authority. Salvatore Greco. I recognized him from surveillance photos Adrian had shown me. Miss Sullivan, he said with practiced courtesy. I apologize for the dramatic retrieval, but you've become rather important to Adrian Kane, or should I say, Adrian Volkov. We know his real name, his history, his weaknesses, and you, my dear, appear to be his newest vulnerability. I'm just an accountant, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I work for him, that's all. You're more than that. Our intelligence says he's protected you, invested resources in keeping you safe, changed operational patterns to accommodate your presence. That kind of attention from Adrian Volkov means you matter, which makes you leverage. He pulled out his phone, dialed, then put it on speaker. Adrian's voice came through, sharp with barely controlled rage. Greco, Adrian, I have something that belongs to you. Young woman, green eyes, quite terrified. I believe you know her. Silence on the other end, thick and dangerous. Then, if you hurt her, I will spend the rest of my life destroying everything you've built. Empty threats won't help her, but negotiation might. Friday's meeting, the one your associate Vincent warned us about before his unfortunate arrest. Attend it. Come alone. We'll discuss terms for Miss Sullivan's return. Salvatore's tone was pleasant. Or refuse, and we'll send you pieces of her until you reconsider. Let me talk to her, Adrian demanded. Salvatore held the phone toward me. Tell him you're alive. Adrian. My voice cracked. I'm okay. They grabbed me at Brookside when I was visiting my grandmother. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. This isn't your fault. His voice was gentler. Meant for me alone. I'm going to get you out. Whatever it takes. Do you understand? Before I could respond, Salvatore pulled the phone back. Friday night, 8 o'clock. The warehouse on Seaport Boulevard. Come alone, or she dies screaming. Your choice. He ended the call. I was dragged to a room and locked inside, alone with my terror and the certainty that I'd just become the catalyst for whatever violence was coming. Hours passed in that room. No windows, single door, darkness interrupted only by thin light under the doorframe. I worked at the zip ties, managed to loosen them slightly but not break free. My mind raced through scenarios, none of them ending well. Either Adrian would come alone and walk into a trap, or he'd refuse and I'd pay the price. The door opened suddenly. Luca stood there, armed, blood spattered across his shirt. Come on. We're leaving now. How did you find me? Tracking device in your jacket lining. Adrian insisted after what happened with Vincent. Move. We ran through corridors, past bodies I tried not to look at, out into cold night air where 3 SUVs waited. Adrian stood by the lead vehicle, and the relief that flooded his expression when he saw me was so raw it hurt to witness. He pulled me against him, arms wrapping tight. Are you hurt? No. Scared, but not hurt. I was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting all at once. What happened? We tracked you within 2 hours of the abduction. Salvatore thought he had time to position his people, prepare his trap. He was wrong. Adrian pulled back, scanning my face like he was checking for damage. But this doesn't end here. The Grecos declared war the moment they took you. Now we finish it. Back at the mansion, Adrian wouldn't let me out of his sight. He was different. The careful control he always maintained fractured by whatever he'd felt thinking I was in danger. When I showered, washing away the terror and dust from that room, he waited outside the bathroom door. When I finally emerged in clean clothes, he was pacing like a caged animal. You shouldn't have been a target, he said. This is my fault. I kept you too close, made you visible, put you in danger. You saved me, I countered. If you hadn't insisted on the tracking device, they would have killed me tomorrow. If I'd let you leave 3 weeks ago like I offered, none of this would have happened. His hands clenched into fists. You should go, Ava. Tonight. I'll set you up somewhere safe, far from Boston, far from this life. Your grandmother, too. New identities, financial security, complete separation from everything connected to me. The offer was genuine. I could hear it in his voice, see it in the tension radiating from every muscle. He was trying to protect me the only way he knew how, by pushing me away before his world could destroy me. No, I said simply. You don't understand what you're refusing. The Grecos won't stop. They'll keep coming after you to get to me. Everyone I care about becomes a target. That's the cost of this life. Then stop pushing me away and let me make my own choices. I moved closer, forcing him to look at me. I'm not leaving. Not because you forced me to stay, but because I'm choosing this. Choosing the work, the purpose. Choosing you. Even though you scare me, and I don't fully understand what I'm feeling half the time. His control snapped. Adrian closed the distance between us, hands framing my face, mouth capturing mine with desperate intensity. I kissed him back with equal fervor, channeling weeks of tension and fear and want into this single moment of connection. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. If you stay, this is what you're accepting. Violence, danger, moral compromise. I can't promise safety. I can only promise I'll do everything in my power to protect you. That's all I need, I whispered. We didn't leave his room that night. Made love with the kind of intensity that comes from nearly losing something before fully understanding its value. His hands memorized my body with reverent attention. My mouth traced every scar that marked his survival. We fell asleep, tangled together. And for the first time since this started, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Morning brought harsh reality. Luca knocked at 6 a.m. with urgent news. We have a problem. Internal audit just flagged inconsistencies in our financial transfers. Someone's been skimming small amounts over the past 2 months. Microscopic transfers, almost invisible, but they add up to nearly 200,000. Adrian was out of bed immediately, pulling on clothes with military efficiency. Who has access to those accounts? That's the problem, Luca said. Only our core team. You, me, and 2 others who've been with us for years. I followed them to the office, watching as Adrian pulled up transaction records. The pattern was subtle, brilliant in its design. Someone with deep knowledge of their systems had been siphoning money carefully, avoiding detection until the cumulative amount triggered automated alerts. Let me see the data, I said. Adrian handed me the laptop without question. I built analysis models, tracking transaction origins, identifying digital fingerprints. The pattern emerged slowly. Then all at once. Luca, I said quietly, these transactions originate from your access codes. The room went silent. Luca's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, to resignation in 3 seconds. Clever. Vincent wasn't the only traitor. The Grecos have been planning this for longer than we realized. Adrian's weapon was in his hand before I processed the movement. How long? 2 years. Since they killed your father and you took control. They offered me everything I wanted. Leadership, recognition, wealth. All I had to do was feed them intelligence and wait for the right moment. Luca's tone was matter of fact. You were always brilliant, Adrian. But you were also 22 and inexperienced. I deserved to lead, not follow someone barely old enough to drink. So you betrayed your family for ambition, Adrian said softly. The gentleness in his voice was terrifying. 8 years I trusted you, made you my second, and you sold us out for a promise from our enemies. Not sold out. Positioned strategically. When the Grecos destroy what's left of your operation after Friday, I'll step into leadership of the merged organization. Everything your father built, under my control. Adrian's expression was stone. You're not walking out of this room. What followed was execution, swift and professional. I watched from the doorway as Adrian put a bullet through the brain of someone he'd called brother for 8 years. Watched him process the betrayal without visible emotion, compartmentalizing grief for later. When it was done, Adrian stood over Luca's body in silence. Then he turned to me, and the exhaustion in his eyes was devastating. This is what I meant. Everyone I trust, everyone I let close, they either betray me or become targets. You should run while you still can. I crossed the room, took his hand despite the blood spattered across his shirt. I'm not running. We finish this together. He pulled me close, holding on like I was the only solid thing in his collapsing world. Outside, dawn was breaking over mountains that had witnessed too much violence. Inside, we stood together in the wreckage of betrayal, and I understood that staying with Adrian meant accepting loss as a constant companion. But some things were worth the cost, and he was becoming one of them. Friday arrived wrapped in the kind of tension that makes breathing feel like work. Adrian had been strategizing since Luca's execution, coordinating with allies I didn't know he had, positioning resources for what he called the endgame. I watched him transform from the man who'd held me through the night into the calculating commander who'd built an empire through intelligence and ruthlessness. The Grecos have been operating on faulty assumptions, Adrian explained to his assembled team that afternoon. 6 men, all veterans of his organization, all fiercely loyal after Luca's betrayal exposed how deeply the rot had spread. They think we're weakened by internal division. They're counting on us being reactive, defensive. Instead, we're going to dismantle their financial infrastructure while they're focused on the physical confrontation. He turned to me. That's where you come in. I need you to access their offshore accounts, freeze their emergency reserves. Without liquid capital, they can't pay soldiers, can't maintain operations, can't sustain a war. You want me to hack the Greco financial systems, I said, understanding the scope of what he was asking. From here, while you're at the warehouse, you'll have support. Marcus is one of the best digital specialists in the Northeast. He'll handle the technical penetration. You provide the forensic analysis, identify which accounts matter, guide him to the targets. Adrian moved closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. This keeps you away from the physical violence. Safe, while you walk into a trap designed to kill you, I countered. How is that any kind of solution? Because you'll be alive when this is over, and that's all that matters to me. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek. If something happens to me tonight, Marcus has instructions. He'll get you and your grandmother out of Boston, set you up with new identities somewhere the Grecos can't reach. You'll be protected. The words hit like ice water. He was planning for his own death. Making arrangements like this was just another business contingency. Adrian, no. Change the plan. Let me help from inside the operation. Give me a way to be useful where you can see me. I can't lose you, he said simply. I've lost too many people I cared about. My father, my brother, Luca, despite his betrayal. I won't watch you die, because I kept you too close to my war. Before I could argue further, his phone buzzed. He checked it, jaw tightening. The Grecos moved the meeting. Abandoned warehouse on the docks instead of Seaport Boulevard. They're trying to control the terrain. That makes it more dangerous, one of his men said. Multiple entry points, less visibility, easier to position an ambush, which is why we adapt. Adrian started issuing orders, repositioning his people, adjusting surveillance coverage. Watching him work was like watching a grandmaster play chess, every move calculated 3 steps ahead. 2 hours later, I sat in the mansion's secure communications room with Marcus, a thin man in his 30s who spoke in technical jargon and moved through digital systems like water flowing downhill. Multiple screens surrounded us, each showing different aspects of the Greco financial network. Their security is decent, but not exceptional, Marcus said, fingers flying across keyboards. Corporate structure hides the illegal operations, but if you know what patterns to look for, the seams show. Where do we hit first? I pulled up the analysis I'd prepared over the past 2 days, tracking Greco transactions through publicly available records and intelligence Adrian's people had gathered. Here, this offshore account in the Caymans. It's their emergency reserve, approximately $8 million. Freeze it, and they lose operational flexibility immediately. Marcus worked in focused silence for 10 minutes. Got access. Initiating transfer freeze. They'll know someone's in their system within 5 minutes. So we need to move fast. What's next? We worked methodically, hitting account after account. Shell companies that held real estate assets, investment portfolios that funded their operations, payroll accounts that kept soldiers loyal. Each freeze sent ripples through their organization, and I could almost feel their panic as they realized they were under financial siege. My phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. In position. Operation starts in 10 minutes. Stay safe. I typed back. You too. Come back to me. 3 dots appeared. Then, always. The screens in front of me suddenly erupted with activity. Marcus swore. They're counterattacking, trying to reverse our freezes, regain access. Someone competent is on their end. Can you hold them off? For a while. But Ava, they're redirecting resources. It looks like they're pulling people from the warehouse to deal with this financial crisis. He looked at me. We're creating the distraction Adrian needed. On another screen, surveillance footage showed the warehouse where Adrian was heading. Fewer vehicles than expected, less visible security. The Grecos were scrambling, divided between the physical trap they'd set and the financial attack they hadn't anticipated. Then gunfire erupted on the audio feed. Shouting, tactical commands in Italian, the chaos of violence happening in real time while I sat helpless miles away. Marcus grabbed my shoulder. Focus on the work. That's how you help him. Finish what we started. He was right. I forced myself to concentrate, tracking the final accounts we needed to compromise. The Grecos' war fund, their political protection money, the reserves they used to buy loyalty from corrupt officials. Each freeze weakened them further, transformed this from a tactical strike into strategic demolition. 15 minutes into the assault, Marcus's systems showed incoming alarm. We have a problem. Someone just pinpointed our location. They're sending people here. How long do we have? 10 minutes if we're lucky. 5 if they're already moving. I made a decision. Finish the financial attack. I'll buy us time. Ava, you're not trained for this. You should run. Running doesn't help Adrian. I grabbed the handgun he kept in the desk drawer. Checked that it was loaded like Adrian had taught me during long nights when I couldn't sleep, and he couldn't stop preparing for threats. Just finish the job. Security alerts sounded throughout the mansion. Monitors showed 3 vehicles approaching fast, at least 8 armed men. Adrian's remaining guards mobilized, taking defensive positions, but they were outnumbered. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Miss Sullivan. Salvatore Greco's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. You're very clever. Attacking our finances while we were focused on your lover. But it won't save him. My men have him pinned down in that warehouse. He'll be dead within the hour. Your men are abandoning the warehouse, I said, watching surveillance feeds that showed exactly that. Half your force just pulled out to deal with the financial crisis and come after me. Adrian has the advantage now. You think this changes anything? We'll kill you both, reclaim our accounts, and take everything the Volkov family built. This was always how this ended. No, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. This is how it ends. Your organization is broke. Your soldiers won't fight without pay. Your allies won't protect you without bribes. We didn't just freeze your money, Salvatore. We destroyed your power structure. I ended the call as the first explosion rocked the mansion. The Grecos were breaching the perimeter. Gunfire echoed through rooms I'd walked through every day for months, close enough that I could hear men shouting tactical positions. Marcus finished the last transfer. Done. Every major Greco account is frozen. It'll take them months to regain access, if they can at all. Now we need to leave. We ran through corridors, following escape routes Adrian had shown me. Behind us, the sounds of combat intensified. One of Adrian's guards appeared, wounded, covering our retreat with suppressing fire. We made it to the garage, piled into an SUV. Marcus drove like he was racing for our lives, because he was. Behind us, the Greco forces were swarming the mansion, but they were too late. We'd already accomplished the mission. 20 minutes later, we reached a secondary safe house. Marcus secured the perimeter while I tried Adrian's phone over and over. No answer. Just endless ringing that made my heart clench tighter with each unanswered call. Then finally, after what felt like years, he answered. Ava, are you alive? Are you hurt? The questions tumbled out. Alive. Minor shoulder wound, nothing serious. The Grecos collapsed faster than we expected. When their people started getting calls about frozen accounts, half of them just left. Salvatore made a run for it. We tracked him down 2 blocks from the warehouse. And he's no longer a problem. The Greco organization is finished. Between the financial destruction you orchestrated and the leadership vacuum we created, they're done as a threat. Relief made my legs weak. The mansion was attacked. We had to evacuate. I know. My people reported in. Minor damage, no casualties on our side. You did exactly what needed doing. His voice softened. I'm coming to you now. Stay where you are. He arrived 30 minutes later, blood on his shirt from the shoulder wound, exhaustion carved into every line of his face, but alive. I crashed into him, and he held me tight despite the injury. "You scared me," I said against his chest. "Don't ever do that again." "You scared me back. I told you to stay safe, and you engaged enemy forces to buy time for the financial attack." But there was pride in his voice, alongside the concern. "We make a good team," I said. "We do." He pulled back to look at me. "The war's over. The Grecos are gone. Without their pressure, we can actually build something stable. But Ava, this won't be the last crisis. This life is constant threats, constant adaptation. I meant what I said before. You can still leave. I'll make sure you're protected. Set up somewhere safe." I thought about the past months. Being framed, kidnapped, forced into this world, and then choosing to stay despite every rational reason to run. Thought about discovering I was good at this work, valuable in ways my forensic accounting career had never made me feel. Thought about Adrian, complicated and dangerous and surprisingly principled. "I'm not leaving," I said. "But I have conditions. My grandmother gets permanent care, best facility we can find. I want legal consultation on protecting myself if this goes wrong. And I want honesty. No more secrets about what we're really doing." "Done," Adrian said without hesitation. "Anything else?" "Yeah. Kiss me before I remember I'm supposed to be terrified about what just happened." He did, thorough and hungry, and I kissed him back with equal intensity. We'd survived tonight. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats. The constant navigation of living in a world balanced between legitimate business and organized crime. But for now, wrapped in his arms in a safe house at dawn, I felt something close to peace. 3 months later, life had settled into a new normal. Adrian restructured his organization, focusing on legitimate businesses while carefully extracting from the criminal operations that had defined his father's empire. I ran financial analysis, making us profitable through strategy instead of violence. My title was Chief Financial Officer. My office was adjacent to Adrian's, and everyone treated me with the respect usually reserved for family. Grandma Rose was thriving in an upscale care facility, her heart condition stable, her spirits high. She'd met Adrian twice, once with deep suspicion and once with grudging approval after he spent 2 hours listening to her stories about raising me. I kept my apartment in the city but stayed at the mansion most nights. Adrian and I navigated our relationship with the same careful strategy we applied to business. Intense, consuming, built on mutual respect and recognition of each other's strengths. Late one evening, I found him on the mansion terrace, rain falling gently over the mountains we'd both grown to love. He pulled me close, and I leaned into his warmth. "You stole from me," he said softly, echoing the words from that first terrible night in the warehouse. "What did I steal?" I asked, playing along. "Everything. My focus, my control, my heart. You came into my life as a problem to solve, and instead you changed everything I thought I knew about what I wanted." "Good," I said, turning to kiss him, "because you stole mine first. The moment you threatened me, terrified me, and then showed me I was capable of surviving in your world." "Our world," he corrected. "This is ours now, what we build together." The rain continued falling, washing away the violence and fear that had brought us together. What remained was partnership, understanding, and something that felt remarkably like love despite growing from the darkest circumstances. I'd lost my old life to Vincent's betrayal, but in its place I'd found purpose, belonging, and a future with someone who saw me as equal rather than victim. The path here had been brutal and morally complicated, but standing in Adrian's arms, rain soaking us both, I wouldn't change a single terrifying moment that led me home.